Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and for those online watching us, good morning, good evening, wherever you are today. Welcome to this session with a funny word in the middle of it, quantum. So I think it detracted perhaps some people thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be a complicated one, and looking at the number of scientist colleagues in the room, you're actually wondering why we're here. But don't worry, we have plenty of time. We have an hour and a half, and we have time to, I'd say, decomplexify the issue and explain to you why it's important for us today. Science for Social Justice, the title of this week. How does quantum have to do with science for social justice? And so you see the title of this session is we link it to SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. How, why, how did we come up with that? That's what we're going to unpack with you today. So to perhaps get an idea of our audience, those online we won't get there, but just a show of hands of who in this room consider themselves scientists. Please raise your hands. Okay, that's perhaps half, huh? And who considers themselves from the policy diplomacy world? Well, that's good. We got a good mix here. And the others? Anybody in the other category? Philanthropy, business, citizens. Okay, we got one other. Two of you. Okay, so that's good. So we get somewhat of a feedback from that. But that's exactly the idea, is this mix, which we don't get very often, this mix of science, diplomacy, policy, and this is where the mayonnaise takes for us, and this is where it's important to have these conversations. So we will get you into that. So here is our esteemed panel today. I will introduce our speakers, and we will go through this together. So to my left, many titles, but I think here today as the chairman of the JESDA Science Diplomacy Anticipator. He's also has multiple hats with the World Economic Forum, and on many, I'd say that's where he considers himself perhaps impact and not diplomacy nor science. So very interesting perspective as well. We have to Peter's left, Matthias Treuer, who's a technical fellow and corporate vice president at Microsoft. He is also a former professor of ETH in Zurich. And in our situation here, as you see his title of OQI, co-chair, you'll understand a bit more what that means as we go. Next to Matthias, Anousheh Ansari, the other co-chair of OQI, with a very different hat, and I would put you in the impact category, I would say. The non-scientist, non-diplomat, non-policy, although you are an engineer by training. Gone NGO, Saving the World, CEO of the X Prize Foundation, a non-for-profit based in California, who's been in existence for over 25 years, and there to really bring challenges and bottom-up innovation and get people participating in the grand challenges of today. And finally, Francesco Petruccione, our local, Francesco from Stellenbosch. Actually, you're not from Stellenbosch, but who is really our local anchor, and professor of quantum computing, and also member of the task force, this group of specialists from diplomacy and science we brought together to create this Open Quantum Institute, which we will be sharing with you today. But before that, we will give you a bit of the context, and this is a session that we, the Geneva Science and Diplomacy Anticipator, wanted to bring here because We don't yet. We're relatively new, and we don't yet have a presence in Africa, on the African continent, and this is part of where we want to go. And so this has been a perfect opportunity to come here, reach out, although many are probably from other places in the world here as well. But it's important for us to interact, understand, and work together with our local partners and scientists, and also with the government leaders. So Peter, I will let you start with giving us a bit of an insight on JESDA, why is this science and diplomacy, and we also have a little video for you, which we will start with to give you a bit of color and action. As we know, the mind works better with a little animation and help on the creative side, on the art side, as we've been discussing recently. So, thank you for launching that.
We don't start with the problem.
Because where would we begin?
The issues of today
are very different
to our obstacles of tomorrow.
That's why we start with world-changing science.
We ask scientists how it will impact people,
society, and the planet.
Then we work together
to understand the opportunity and risk.
We don't start with the problem.
We anticipate future scientific advances
in the early stages of their development.
First, our scientific breakthrough radar identifies 5 key scientific platforms.
We dive into these with more than 1,000 scientists across the globe. Each issue is broken down into 4 emerging topics.
That's split into further subfields.
From each of these, we pinpoint emerging research
and map major science advances
5, 10, and 25 years into the future.
Take quantum computing.
The scientists we work with today anticipate that in 5 years' time,
new and useful quantum algorithms will accelerate future hardware development.
In 10 years' time,
quantum processors will find real-world applications.
And in 25 years,
million-qubit computers solve useful, classically intractable problems.
But why should we care?
What does this mean to us? Our planet?
We keep asking 3 fundamental questions.
Who are we as humans?
How can we all live together?
And how can we ensure the well-being of humankind and the sustainable future of our planet?
And then?
Then we accelerate new ideas together
that can last and will make a difference.
We bring together diplomats,
decision makers, business leaders,
and citizens of the world in task forces.
Jointly design inclusive solutions
for the benefit of humanity, working towards a sustainable future
where everyone has the right freely
to share in scientific advancement
and its benefits.
We test,
we verify,
we prototype,
we pilot,
we fund.
Science and diplomacy working together.
From our initial 216 breakthroughs,
8 ideas of solutions so far
are worked out by our task forces.
This year, we are ready to launch a survey on the first 2 of them to accumulate the support needed
for maximum global reach.
An open quantum institute in a related global context.
With our partner, XPRIZE, to accelerate use cases SDGs.
A first global curriculum for science diplomacy.
And a related youth and anticipation initiative with the University of Cape Town.
And then we translate these ideas into action
and fund them through our Impact Forum.
Thanks to partners allowing us to leverage resources
and create actionable solutions.
We don't start with the problem. We use the future to build the present.
Voila. Peter.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to be here. I'm very happy that we had this invitation from the organizers and from the South African government to come and to tell us a little bit about JESDA, a rather newly born baby, only 3 years old. So it is a foundation, a private-public partnership, which has been created by the Swiss government, by the government of Geneva and the city of Geneva. I would also like to give a special thank to our board member, and she is the chair of the Chester Citizen Forum, Professor Mamogeti Pakeng, who is the Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Town, and who unfortunately cannot be with us today because they had a small but unforeseen health issue. Obviously, we wish her a prompt recovery. And when we were saying before that, well, we want to come to Africa, I would say having her in the board, Africa is already from the very beginning, has been part of our thinking and has been part of Chester from the very beginning, having her at the board. And I'm looking forward to our, I would say, next public appearance here in South Africa after we have this opportunity today, which is going to be in Cape Town here, the first Chester Youth Anticipation Summit, which we're going to celebrate in the beginning of next year. So Africa is very much on our mind when we are talking at Chester. As I said, it's a 3-year-old young foundation, and basically what we are doing is we are promoting a public-private partnership which really takes into consideration all stakeholders, from scientists beginning to politicians, diplomats, but also civic society, NGOs, and entrepreneurs, also the economy. So basically what we are doing, we are gathering people who believe that the world cannot afford not to take advantage of what scientists and scientific breakthroughs are offering. I think most of the problems of this world can only be solved through new scientific breakthroughs. The way we are running the world today is not sustainable, we know that. And we are using much too many resources. I mean, every single year we are finishing the resources which are available at the middle of the year. We are now in the beginning of June. We have been using all what is really available to us, and every year it is going faster and faster. So we know this system is not really sustainable. So in order to be able to make this a sustainable world for 10 billion or 11 billion of people, we have to use scientific breakthroughs. Otherwise, we will not be able to have this. And I think there are a lot of those things available. But what we have been deciding is we are looking what is really cooking in the laboratories of this world, all over the world. We had over 4,000 scientists who have participated in this survey, telling us what they are doing and what is their possibility, how do they see the possibilities of their scientific work to have an impact on humankind in 5 years, in 10 years, or in 25 years. And this scouting is condensed then afterwards in a document which is the Scientific Breakthrough Radar, which is a document like this, where you have over 255 scientific breakthroughs. This book is signed by 755 scientists, and it gives you a fantastic feeling of what is coming up to us in the next 5, 10, and 25 years. It's a unique document. I must say, every participant, it's all of them, they are voluntary participants. Nobody is paid here. And the reason why the scientists are participating is because, first of all, this document never existed. It gives them a feeling of what's going on in the world. And secondly, I think we have always positioned Chester as an honest broker. We have no hidden interests. We have no commercial interests. We have no political interests. Chester is only financed by the Swiss government and by philanthropic institutions. We have not accepted for Chester money coming from other governments or money coming from big corporations, because I wanted to keep Chester always free of any pressure that can come. We have seen so many scientific institutions or multilateral institutions which have been financed by countries and then afterwards being used for political reasons and coming under pressure. And this is what makes us so different. and which makes us more attractive to scientists. They know there is no commercial nor political interest behind GESTA. I think that's a very important part of it. So what we are doing is, once we have established this radar, and by the way, everything we are doing is transparent. You find this radar, of course, in the internet, but you find everything we are doing clearly explained in the internet, so you don't have to have the booklet. If you want it, of course, we are very happy to send it to you. But you also find everything in the internet. We are completely transparent in what we are doing. And once we have this, we then go into what we call the diplomatic forum. The diplomatic forum is a group of people who are coming from all different parts, mainly, I would say, but not only, from the multilateral parts organizations. So we have all the heads of the 14 multilateral organizations in Geneva, but we also have governments included. And what the political and the diplomatics are doing, they're going through this radar, and they are starting to analyze what are the implications that those breakthroughs can have for the development, economic, social development of the world in the future. And what would be the conditions that we have to create that those breakthroughs can be applied in the most generous, open, and for all mankind positive way, and not only be for the economic benefit of 2 or 3 companies of the world, or of the 2 or 3 political superpowers who then afterwards use scientific breakthrough for what I call this new neocolonialism, technological neocolonialism. Okay, I give you this, or you cannot use this if you do not do the vote in the next UN General Assembly. So I mean, those things we want to avoid. Okay, so what then the diplomatic forum is doing is analyzing this, and then makes us proposition what would be solutions that we would be able to assure that those breakthroughs are really for the common good and for the big part of the population, as I said, not for some very interested parts and concentrated parts. So one of those breakthroughs which we have been analyzing is quantum computing. And I think the best thing is I hand over to you, to our representatives who are running both the diplomatic and the scientific part of this quantum computing. We came to the conclusion that quantum computing, in order that the application, not the research is already in the hands, it is already done. So this is not, we are not proposing to create a research center. What we are proposing is to create an open quantum institute where we can discuss openly what should be the applications for quantum computing, what should be the priorities for those applications, so that the biggest part of the population can take an advantage, evidently including Africa. And this is the reason why we already started to talk to the young generation of Africa. We shared with them the radar, we shared with them the idea of Open Institute, and we already have received feedback from the young generation what they would expect that the quantum computing can present them as an opportunity in the future. But I think the best thing now, I hand over to our specialists.
Thank you, Peter. So you got that. GESDA is not just a think tank, but a do tank. We have the dots on the radar, which are there to not only inform you, but provoke you to think about what are we going to do about them. We anticipate, so we have time between the 5, 10, 25 years coming to be ready to embrace them, to make sure these faucets stay open, science for the benefit of all, as opposed to coming in too late and reacting and closing these faucets and actually not allowing the benefits of science to be available for all. So that's really important to look at this in advance. So we, indeed, the radar online, GESDA radar, very easy to get. Then how do you read that? That's another challenge. We indeed are translating this radar into, for the other communities who don't necessarily understand that. So that's a big piece of JESDA's work too. So one piece of the radar, and that's where we're going next, is quantum computing. We have 4 topics on the radar on quantum technologies. One of them is quantum computing. We zoom in to Matthias Troyer, who is a contributor, and Francesco on this dot on the radar. But first, before we start explaining what we're doing about it, why is quantum computing on the radar? Why do we need to pay attention to that? And so first, Matthias, tell us.
Yes, so first I want to thank you, Daria, and thank the World Science Forum for the panel here, and thank you all for coming, because the topic is timely and important. And I'm particularly interested in discussing how quantum computing will help the nations in Africa, and how we build the quantum ecosystem here that thrives, how we make it real in Africa. Because I've worked in quantum computing now for, it's been 22 years already, and I think we are at an inflection point now. If I look at the quantum landscape, then I believe we're at the point now where hype starts to give way to clarity, where we have clarity now of what the impact will be of quantum, and where we have clarity of what of what we need to get there. And the good news is that the impact, the promise of quantum is real. With quantum computers, there will be certain problems, some of the hardest challenges that face the planet, that we can solve with quantum computers that we cannot solve in any other way. And why is that? And what are these problems? That's where we want to create some clarity. And so deep down, when you think about it, quantum computers are a new type of machines that work based on the fundamental principles of how nature works. They're so complex that Einstein always had doubts whether whether the world is really that complex. But then with that, those quantum machines are ideally suited to simulate nature. If you want to simulate how nature works, you need a machine that runs based on the principles of nature, and that's what a quantum computer is. So those machines are then specifically suited for solving problems in chemistry, chemical reactions, materials, drugs, pharma. So anything where we want to simulate nature. And then people ask me sometimes, is that enough? Is it enough to actually build a machine that all it can do is simulate chemistry? And many people are sad about that, disappointed. And then I say, no, this is actually the foundation of most of what we do. When you think back that we call the ages of mankind by materials, we have the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, the Silicon Age. Chemicals and materials are the foundation of our progress as a society. And in that space, there are many challenges also around the SDGs, where that will have a big impact. For example, let's look at climate. We would love to have a chemical process that simply removes carbon from the atmosphere and reverses your global warming. We work on that now, but the way scientists work on that is we try out different chemicals and catalysts. We just try and screen thousands in blind search, intuition maybe, but we really have to try out tens of thousands of chemicals, of catalysts, to try to find something that is efficient. With a quantum computer, we will be able to simulate those processes. We will be able to understand it. And from the insight we gain, we can then guide the research. We can guide the scientists, and we can design a catalyst that helps us remove carbon from the atmosphere. So that's the type of impact that we can use those machines then to actually design materials. We could, for example, a second topic, food security. Right now, the fertilizer is made in big factories. For example, Morocco, Algeria, elsewhere, there are big factories that make fertilizer. And then you have to ship it. And in most places in Africa, there's not enough fertilizer. But now just imagine a world in which we find a new way of making fertilizer locally in a village. If every farmer can make their own fertilizer efficiently, that can have a huge impact. We don't know if it's possible, but what we do know is finding such a process to make that will require a quantum computer. Third example, better batteries, better solar panels, whatever. So there's so much impact that we can have if we can improve the materials, the chemicals we have. So this is really what we want to build the quantum machine for. So the impact will be huge.
Thank you, Matthias. So the question now is, what is actually happening in the field in Africa? And I think, Francesco, you're the perfect person to give us maybe, Matthias, you can pass your microphone. Thank you. So what of course, what Stellenbosch is doing, but also more generally, what is the workforce? What's happening in terms of research in Africa today?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. First of all, maybe the important thing is that countries like South Africa and many other, and almost all countries in Africa, missed completely out on the semiconductor revolution, yeah, which helped many Asian countries develop their economy. So the African continent missed that opportunity completely. Yeah? And the highest priority is to make sure that we don't miss now the quantum revolution. Yeah? So we want to focus our efforts to make sure that that we are on board, yeah? And that we at least try to find a share of the quantum pie for the African continent and contribute to the economic development of Africa. Yeah? So that's one. The second point is that the cases of application of quantum computing that Matthias mentioned, yeah, those are situations that affect the world in its globality. Yeah? So it's not something specific to the US or Europe or Africa. So we have the same problems. And not only the fertilizer, the materials, everything. Yeah? So we need to develop capability in this area. Yeah? And historically, for instance, if you do a little bibliometric study of quantum computing in the world and in Africa, you see that the development of the number of publications is more or less parallel. It increases in Africa as it increases in the world. Yeah? But we are just a couple of orders of magnitude lower in the number. Yeah? So we have a little bit of catch up. But that means, from the positive side, that there is expertise, and maybe not as much as in other countries, but there are people that are actively engaged in developing quantum computing and other quantum technologies as well. Yeah? We've been a little bit late in developing the policies to support quantum technologies. Yeah? For instance, in South Africa, it's only 2 years ago that the South African government accepted a roadmap for quantum technology in South Africa. Yeah? And probably this is probably one of the first roadmaps in Africa. I'm not sure. I don't know. There are other African people here that maybe have better knowledge of what happens in their countries. Yeah? But one of the, specifically in the area of quantum computing, critical decision that we have taken is that because we don't have the resources of Europe, of Switzerland, of the US, yeah, at this stage, we won't make an effort to develop our own quantum computing hardware. Yeah? We just, because that requires hundreds of millions of dollars that maybe we can use better in developing quantum software engineers, yeah? That help developing algorithms, write code to run on quantum computers that maybe the Open Quantum Institute will give us access to. Yeah? So that was a critical decision that we have taken. So let's use the resources that we have, not to develop the hardware, also because it's at this stage maybe you could put all your funding on the wrong horse, yeah? And you decide to do something with superconductors, and instead the photonics quantum computers win. Yeah? That would be a little bit of a waste of funding. Yeah? And so we are concentrating our resources on the algorithmic side, on the software side of things. Yeah? And and we try to develop the quantum computing workforce of the future. Yeah? But at the same time, we also try not to neglect other quantum technologies like quantum communication, quantum sensing. Some of us also have a weakness for quantum effects in biological systems, yeah? And those you could also couple to quantum computing, because at the end of the day, it's all chemical reactions. Yeah? So we focus more on the software than on the hardware for now. Yeah?
Thank you, Francesco. So we see there's a disparity, there's a great need of what the potential could bring of the technology. We see there's a disparity for the technology in the hands of some countries, some companies. It's a highly hyped topic. It's a highly geopolitical topic on the technology front. So that's the context, let's put it like that. Where's the gap? Where do these conversations that we facilitated, where have you arrived thinking, what should we do about it? We're not yet jumping into what we are doing about it, but what triggered this to be in Jezda's hands and the need to bring it to the table of the non-scientists?
Yeah, so I mentioned all of the impact that quantum computing can have. But to get there and to really develop something, the quantum computer that's based on a theory that even Einstein had problems believing, that needs the collective genius of the planet. We need the best and smartest minds of the world working together. We cannot do it alone in one country. And I've been here 3 years back before the COVID at the summer school run by Francesco, and was amazed at how many interesting, excited, smart people I found here in Africa. And we need the talent to build it. We needed to build the quantum machine, but more importantly, if we want to actually solve the problems of the world, we need the people of the world to help us build the solutions, help us solve the people who face the problems, who know what the challenges are. And so we need people here in Africa and around the world to build the solutions with us, to tackle those challenges together. And for that, we first it's a challenge of skilling. We need to help the people learn about it, as Francesco said. There are smart people here. They need the access to information, to learn about it, the access to quantum machines. And so the first thing we need is we need a way to give the people the opportunity to engage here. And we need to make sure that this is not just not prevented, but that it is intentionally enabled. Because just people in Europe, in North America alone will not do it. In my company, when we want to hire people, we are limited by the talent. We're limited in finding the really smart people, the best people to help us there. And so we need to help more people learn about it.
So we have a distribution issue, and we have a focus issue in the sense of we want to make sure we have the best minds, not necessarily the best scientists, coming in to think about how we should use the quantum computers. And we also have a gap clearly on what are these computers today being designed for or used for, or how are they anticipated to being used for. And all these examples that Matthias was giving in the beginning on these topics of climate or decarbonization materials or antimicrobial resistance, or those are not commercially interesting today. So how do we actually put that on the agenda? And that's where diplomacy comes in our Geneva Science Diplomacy Anticipator. Is a priori the quantum discussion stops here. And to make sure we go to the next step, we need to drag our colleagues from the diplomacy world into this discussion. And that's where it's very difficult to start this reflection on what should we do about it. So here we've just talked about the what, and now, so what? What do we do about it? So our task force, which we started 18 months ago, Matthias and Anousheh co-chaired and spearheaded this exercise. So Anousheh, please walk us through the now what, and what have you been developing with us in the last year?
So thanks again for inviting us and allowing us to share some of our work with you, and hopefully entice you to join forces with JESDA and the work, especially on the quantum side. So you heard from Peter talking about identifying really important areas of technological advancement that can have a big impact in the world, and quantum being one. And my colleagues and my co-chair Matthias and one of our task force member Francesco talked about specific applications. As an entrepreneur, tech entrepreneur, I've seen in the past how technologies in the hands of a few can create big digital divides, where some part of the society benefits greatly from it, some other parts don't. And in particular, sometimes those who have access to the technology, motivated only by profit, can come up with applications that do not necessarily benefit the entire society. So at the core of the work of the task force, which is comprised of a multidisciplinary, multi-sector individuals who have come together, and as Daria mentioned, over the past 18 months, tried to look at this issue and say, how can we make sure a technology as powerful as quantum, that is today, because of the cost and complexity of it, in the hands of few, be opened up so it can be accessed by many across the world. And at the same time, instead of waiting to see what happens next, how can we anticipate and be ahead of the game in terms of policy and create smart policies that would allow for equitable and just access to these important technologies, and make sure we create an inclusive society when it comes to use of quantum technology. And that has been sort of the debate we've had with my colleagues for the past 18 months, and trying to understand how best we can achieve that. And at the core of this, we came up with the idea of an open quantum institute, where we can bring everyone together and through sharing and partnership and sharing of resources, sharing of information, try to get there. And we have a video that we can share to explain that a little bit better.
What do we mean when we talk about quantum?
The big news about quantum is that in the first time in millennia, we invent a new way of computing.
Quantum technology is something that's rapidly developing, and it will have a big impact on the world.
Our work's very necessary if you're going to use quantum computing to actually work on real-life problems.
To be able to actually share what the quantum capability will allow in the future, we absolutely need to open it up.
There will be problems we can solve with quantum that will be totally intractable classically.
In 2050, 3/4 of the world's population will live in urban centres. So we're already trying to anticipate what's happening in the world, as we know, and how there'll be a need to adapt the way we live.
At this time, quantum computers will no longer be isolated to the lab. Governments, private companies, institutions of learning will all be harnessing this technology. We see this already having a huge impact on aeronautics and much more.
We'd very much appreciate if governments and particularly local authorities would look objectively to the future, to spare some time to look at innovation.
It is a geopolitical topic where many public and private actors are already investing.
There's a huge gap between people who know the theory of quantum computing and people with the application problem, and we started to bridge that.
Looking at quantum computing through a diplomatic lens, we see that there are gaps. Some players cannot afford to take part in the development or use of quantum computers. Also, the application in wider societal and environmental challenges has not been fully explored. We believe everyone should have the right to benefit from this science, and its potential should be harnessed to progress the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
One of the core ideas that came from the task force was an Open Quantum Institute, an inclusive, collaborative effort around developing the technology will ensure that the future of these technologies will benefit the entire human race and not just certain companies or countries.
With an Open Quantum Institute, or OQI, JESDA and its community propose to enable a space where quantum computing is made accessible and understandable to all.
Bringing these actors together to make a baseline for use cases around SDGs is going to be at the core of what the Open Quantum Institute will bring.
This is fundamental to our work, bringing science and diplomacy together to allow room for discourse and multilateral coordination. Brokering this conversation in the early stages of any new technology will allow everyone to have the tools that impact people, society and the planet.
The Open Quantum Institute is well placed in Geneva and in Switzerland with different actors from the international governance world.
The Open Quantum Institute will work with a global networks of partners who focus on universal challenges and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, who help define and prepare real-world use cases for quantum computing applications.
Quantum is a complex technology. It's something that when you just say quantum, a lot of people run away because I'm not a physicist, I don't know anything about quantum.
We need the best and brightest people on the planet to help us.
We are calling to technology providers and developers to express their interest in tackling the SDG use cases the OQI will be providing. We also need governments to actively help shape the multilateral relevance of the Open Quantum Institute. We want the OQI not to just be an idea on paper, but a real center where you can all come and benefit from it. This is a brand new approach, and we want you to join the discourse and share your ideas and help us test it. Together, we can use the future to build the present.
So Anousheh, here's the idea.
Yeah.
What does the idea look like today?
Yeah, so I can maybe frame it in terms of what we are going to do or we're anticipating to do at OQI and what we're not. First, we're not going to build a quantum computer, so we're not focused on the hardware side. We're also not going to do our own independent research, so this is not going to be another university with its own staff. And however, it will collaborate and work with universities and partners across the globe and instigate and create opportunities for researchers to work together and bring resources in terms of quantum cloud computing resources and other resources to make it possible for the scientists to collaborate and work together and try their ideas where they may not have access to those. We will focus this effort and try to really create an incentive to focus these types of research on SDGs, solving SDGs, and other problems that grand challenges that faces humanity, that quantum is uniquely suited to solve these problems efficiently and in a timely fashion once it becomes available. And on the other side of it is also focused on creating awareness and educating policymakers and people who will be impacted by quantum computing and applications to learn about it, to pay attention to it, to participate and anticipate what the changes it will bring, and create smart policies and work together collaboratively to make sure they have the groundwork laid out once quantum computers actually become available widely.
Francesco, how is that going to help you or Africa? What's in it for researchers? What's in it for us, for you in Africa also?
No, it's a lot. Yeah, first of all, as I said before, we need to contribute to develop the quantum workforce. Yeah, so that, as Matthias said, we need the best people that we can find to help us solve these big challenges, and also to understand better how this quantum business works, because it's still a complicated matter, and we probably still don't know everything. Yeah, and engaging with an open quantum institute will give us access to share knowledge, to share information, to take part in scientific discussions, in technical discussions, maybe even in business discussions, because at the end of the day, we want our graduates maybe to set up their quantum computing startup and develop some products that some other people might want to buy. Yeah? One of the challenges that we already start feeling, and is in line with what Matthias was saying, that we develop maybe students that are really good at what they do, and then the companies like the one that Matthias represents grab them. But we need also to find a solution to keep some of them at least here, because otherwise, we will always be a little bit late at the dinner table. That's why it's important, and that's what also our quantum technology roadmap foresees. We want to work together, not only with university, but also with the innovation funding agency, with the technology innovation and funding agency, with the venture capitalist work, to make sure that we create our own quantum ecosystem in Africa. We don't want to be just producer of students that end up working somewhere else. We need to do the hard work and develop the whole ecosystem. And in the quantum computing area, I don't think it will be too difficult, because if you have access to the hardware, through the Open Quantum Institute or by subscribing to other quantum clouds, it's fairly low cost, the entry level. So there's really a chance that the African continent might not miss out the quantum revolution, and that is the priority number one, to use that to uplift the economic situation of the continent.
Thank you, Francesco, because what we see also is with Matthias and Anousheh in the past year, we've also spoken with a number of governments, of diplomats, of policymakers in probably 20, 25 countries now who've been very interested in, and a number of actually African countries who don't want to miss out. This is going to be not just for the technology, but also to make sure that whatever use cases or whatever SDGs we want to focus on, the data, the needs, the issues are very clearly different from country or continent to another. So the input on what should these research topics become is also extremely important. Matthias, tell us what would happen without the OQI, and also what are probably the biggest challenge to make the OQI happen?
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge is that with any new technology, there are real implications that we have to guard against. There are always threats that come from it, and quantum is not different. And we live in a world also where the media are motivated to surface sensational headlines. And so we hear a lot also about the threats coming from quantum computing. It's more about hype and click rather than the substance. So I'm glad that I have the chance here now to bring some facts to the table here. And the fact is, yes, the risk coming from quantum is that quantum computers will be able to break the currently widely used public key cryptography that we use whenever you send an email that is encrypted, when you go e-banking, online shopping, that is all protected by cryptography that is based on a hard mathematical problem that no classical computer can solve. But a quantum computer will be able to solve these problems. So once you have a quantum computer, then the currently used cryptography is no longer secure. So what do we do about that? First of all, when we build the quantum computers, we want to build them in such a way that a bad actor who wants to use the quantum computer to break cryptography gets found out and gets stopped. So we want to build the quantum computers in a way that it lets you run the important applications in chemistry, but it should not let you break cryptography. That's one thing. The next step we do is there are ideas already and new cryptography schemes that are safe against quantum attacks. And so what we will have to do in the next 5 years, 10 years as we build the quantum computers, we will have to change the cryptography. We have to update our systems. We have to update our phones, our computers, the software, the laptops. The networks all has to be made resistant against the quantum attacks on the cryptography. We know how to do that, but that's work that has to start now. However, there's one big risk here, and that is that the risk associated with cryptography creates an even bigger risk, namely that governments start to impose export control on quantum technology so that no bad actors get access to it. But as I mentioned before, we cannot build the quantum computer alone. My team needs people from all around the world. So if we now limit access to quantum technology, then that will stall progress. We will not get to the point where we can get the benefits of a quantum computing. So instead of building barriers, we have to build bridges, and we have to jointly work on how can we mitigate the risks, how can we make quantum computing safe, impactful, and equitable. And so that's why we're talking to leaders around the world about the need to keep it open, to keep the global access available on quantum technology, because without that, we'll not even get there. And export control also is not a way of preventing access by the bad actors. Really. So we need to find the real ways to safeguard against the threats while keeping the impactful, good use open globally. And that's where we need the help of diplomacy.
And you can imagine those first meetings with these diplomats invited to a quantum discussion. They rushed back to their capital saying, "Tell me what's going on, I don't even know what this is about." And so it took us probably a whole year to get first of them to accept the invitation and then to realize, wow, there's something here that I need to deal with. And after having received the different, I'd say, input from depending if you talk to one country or another about them participating or not participating, the Holy Grail was the SDG, because everybody aligns on wanting to progress the SDGs. And that is where we come in, and we're not trying to do what others do. We're not trying to do technology. We're not trying to do research. We put on the agenda something that nobody else can, and that the countries are willing to break these barriers, or at least to work on breaking these barriers to go forward to support the benefits of humanity, people, planet, society. So it is a challenge, and the challenge to get there, it takes a certain type of discussion and thinking. But in the end, if you look at the Open Quantum Institute, we propose access through the cloud to the technology. So you need to get the technology providers in. You need to make sure the research community finds it interesting and they're going to actually use these cases to work on. Then you need the diplomacy, the foreign affairs, but also the ministries of technology to say, ooh, I'm okay with my scientists working with these other scientists from countries that normally they're not allowed to talk. And also, and I think that is probably the biggest challenge, I don't want to say the biggest, but probably the one that nobody's really worked on, is how do you create these SDG use cases? You have to put these quantum specialists with these climate or food security or other topic specialists. And that's, again, a whole other language and a whole other bridge and that is going to be a big job of the Open Quantum Institute, is to make sure there's a continuous production of these use cases for people to come and work on using this superpower. Now, we have another 10 years or more before the actual technology is there. So some people say, yeah, why today? Because those 10 years can be used very fruitfully. And I think that's where I hand over to Anousheh again. In parallel to our big center, which really requires this science diplomacy nexus, we're also working bottom up with an idea, with innovation, and that's where our partner XPRIZE comes in. Anousheh, just share that.
So because of everything that Daria mentioned and the work that we've done over the past 28 years at XPRIZE, we know and believe that innovation can come from anywhere in the world and from anyone in the world. We've seen people from completely different backgrounds, come up with the best solution to solve, energy problems, carbon capture and reuse problems, ocean health problems, and so on. And quantum, wherever you have a complex problem and you want to focus the attention of the world, to bring the cognitive surplus of the world to focus on a problem, an incentivized competition works well. And this is what we are going to do with JESDA, is to launch a competition to focus the energy and attention of everyone in the world on trying to find out what are some of the best use cases where quantum computing is uniquely suitable to solve these problems, and then ask them to prove that through the use of OQI's resources and win a big competition, a lot of money, so they can hopefully even create a business case and a business out of it. But in order to create the activity, the interest, and specifically focus the energy on solving problems that are important for humanity, like the SDGs, we're using the tool of the competition to do that.
So top down, bottom up, all the big leading scientists of the world with all these governments, and then also everybody else who can come up. And in the meantime, we're really getting everybody educated, we're getting everybody stimulated and understanding the issue. Now, all that has been an idea developed in the last 18 months. We call it a solution idea. And in our way of working at JESDA, we feel that this idea needs to be, it's been designed and developed by 30 leading people in the world, with probably another 100 people around to make sure we have industry input, research input, diplomacy input. But we really need to evaluate, is that the right idea? As Peter said, we're the honest broker. We don't think we have the solution. We are proposing a solution. and the solution has been, I'd say, accepted by this large group. Now we need to go through this final step of getting this formal evaluation done to say, okay, this is probably the best thing we have today to do this. So it gives us the check mark to say, okay, we can go to the next step. As Peter said, we're not just a think tank, we're a do tank, and we see the next 2 years ahead of us still with JESDA's involvement to take this to the next level. And Peter, I'll just let you explain to us a bit how JESDA does that and where we're going. And I'll put up a slide.
Well, thank you. Well, I think I was reflecting on this meeting because like everything we are doing, everything is relatively new to us because such a young foundation. So I was reflecting on what was going on today here, and I must say I'm quite intrigued. I don't know how many of you thought that the subject of quantum computing would be handled the way we handled it today. I don't know many of meetings that I've been on quantum computing that were talking about what happens in 10 years by now, and not talking about the technology, but talking about the implication of the technology, what it can bring and what it cannot bring, okay? And what are the things that we have to take care of? 10 years, because we know and we hear from Matthias, technology will be available in 10 years. So why should we start to think about this today, okay? And I always come back to another thing which was invented in Geneva, which is the internet. Had we had the JESDA when the internet was conceived, I don't think we would have a situation of a concentration of power like we have it today in the hands of 2 or 3 companies. And if you think about the power that and the concentration of data which is in the hand of 3 companies and which is in the hand of about 3 to 4 countries, and how this is being used, if you just think about the influence of one or the other of those companies in the war of Ukraine, where one owner of a company can say, I switch off my satellites, there's no internet, there's no precision weapon anything, and it's in the hand of one person, okay? Because we have allowed, by not being observing early on the consequences of new technologies, we have allowed this interpretation. And the only way to get out of it is today to basically destroy an open system and to make it a national system just because of security reasons. Now you can imagine the power of quantum computing is manifold bigger than the power of the internet. So I think the fact that we are talking today, long before the technology is going to be ripe to be implemented, about the consequences that this can have, and that we are starting to find out ways to avoid that such a concentration of power can happen in the future, I think this is what makes JESDA so different. And this is why perhaps a discussion you have been following today is different to ones that you would have been accustomed to talk when we are talking about quantum computing on the scientific world, okay? And I think this is exactly what we wanted to share with you. And I think the message was very clear. If we create an open quantum institute, it is in order to be open to everybody. There is part of the Declaration of the Human Rights which says that technology breakthroughs and technology development is a human right for everybody. It's in the Declaration of the Human Rights, but how much of this is really being applied? Okay? So we want that this part of the human rights is being respected also in the future. That whatever the breakthrough is, from wherever it is coming, it is something which is right for everybody in this world and not for one or two of the people, which afterwards leads to a concentration of power, which I think would be absolutely fatal for humanity. So that's basically the background that we have and what we are thinking about and why we have created Jester and what Jester is doing. And I thought this example is a good one to make this transparent, to understand what we are wanting to do. And it is an invitation for everybody to participate, because it is an open quantum institute. And open means that everybody should be able to participate. Everybody should be able to bring in. I'm very happy, and we already have, as I said in the very beginning, we have South Africa, and through South Africa, quite an important part of African youth, for example, already participating in starting to lay forward priorities that this Open Quantum Institute should have. They will not come from us. They will come from the input that we are getting through the civil forum that we have, where NGOs can bring forward, where the simple people can bring forward, universities can bring forward what they believe should be the priorities. We will have additionally, as it was mentioned, the X Prize. The X Prize is open to everybody in the world, and we hope that we will get input and recommendations. What should be those priorities in the application of the technology? We're not talking about creating another CERN, for example, okay? Which is really a research center. No, we are not going to do that. What we are talking is about how we can develop applications which are the most efficient one to use these new technologies for the public good. That's basically what we are trying to do. And in this sense, I can only extend the invitation to participate in this. You see on the chart, I think you have on the chart, I mean, if you look at this chart, we have talked about this now 18 months, not even. And we have already received the participation of the scientific world, of the diplomatic world, multilateral institutions, but also governments who have already said, yes, we want to be part of this. And you have the list of all of them over there. So I think it is, if you think about just, not even 18 months that we have started with this, I think it's a sign that the basic idea is being accepted faster than personally I had thought that we would be able to do this. But I said also it will only be successful if everybody participates.
And the other key part for us is that we can't stop at the idea. We're very conscious that if we bring this idea today to anyone, it's actually too complex to be implemented. It takes too many parties. So JESDA is committed for the next 2 years to support what we're calling the incubation of this idea, to actually, thanks to all these partners who already have signed up for it, but anybody who wants to come in, feel free to get back in touch with us. And the idea is that JESDA, through its Impact Forum and its Impact Fund, is going to seed fund the development of the next 2 years. We believe that if we don't really test these use cases, if we don't really start the dynamic of understanding how to do that, if we don't launch these ideas, if we don't start thinking about the governance of such a center, we're talking about an actual center, how is it going to be governed? Who's going to decide what's good or bad? How are we going to actually make sure that the providers that are giving the technology get something that's good in it for them? How do we make sure we get the right funding? Who's going to fund? Is it going to be public, private? Is it going to be a mix? So we need to figure all that out before we're ready to believe that this thing is actually going to happen, and we commit to do that, because we know that if we don't, it's not going to happen. And so I want to make sure we have enough time for all of you to ask questions to our colleagues here, and just raising the attention that this is one dot on the JESDA radar. So we have a lot more to do. And that's why I know probably very few of you, I know a couple of you are quantum specialists, but the rest of you are specialists in other things. And so we want you on all these other projects as well, whether you're from the science or from the diplomacy part. So I suggest we open the floor, and happy to go into any details more. Voilà. To me, you want to? There we go.
Thank you very much. My name is Jérôme Marty. I come from Canada, where I recently led a project that looked at the opportunities and risks of quantum. And Canada is doing a lot of research on quantum. And I really appreciate the start of the conversation about the potentials, the positive aspects. And my question is more about the risks and the worries. We know countries are investing in saving data that could be one day maybe decrypted. There are countries investing also in military applications of quantum, which is potentially scary for civil society. And there is also the growing risk that was shared 2 years ago with our government. The Secret Services of Canada did put quantum on the list of 5 key elements, saying if you work in the field of quantum, if you are a scientist, if you are a company, you have to be very careful, because we are aware of other governments trying to break your work. So my question is about how do we deal with not only the risk around crypto, which we heard with the panel today, but the other sources of risk in terms of data privacy and these other elements that quantum will bring to the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that's a great question, and something I've thought a lot about, because as we want to enable the good use of quantum, we have to guard against the risks. And that risk is real, and what it means, we all have to come together to upgrade our cryptography as soon as possible. Because as you said, if you send an encrypted email now and somebody should intercept it, in 10 years, in 20 years, they will be able to decrypt it. So if you have something that you want to keep secret for more than 10 years, it's easy. Just encrypt it with a strong password and send it in. So there are simple mechanisms how you can stay safe now. Password protect your files before you send them, and you'll be safe, for example. So there are simple ways of then also making sure our new phones, computers, laptops are upgraded. And that's something that we're starting now as, say, a community. What other risks are there? So there's lots of hype around quantum, as I mentioned. Because few people understand, because we need smarter people to help us find out, there's a lot mentioned of where quantum could have an impact, from finance to weather modeling and more. But when you dig deeply into it, then you see that really the applications are what we call a small data problem with an exponential quantum speed up. These are the problems in cryptography that we have to guard against, and these are the opportunities in chemistry and material science. But in that space, the other thing we have to think about, but I think where we also have the solution, is any disruptive technology is dual use. When you develop new materials, it always has dual use, but we have the mechanisms in place for that. And so we need to have the conversation about the sensitive use in general in chemistry and material science. And that should not wait for quantum, because we're making huge progress in that field using machine learning. We can run simulations 10,000 times faster today with machine learning than before. So, and there the same principles apply. So we have to think in that space for computing. What are the right principles we have there to keep it safe? So that's a broader conversation.
And just to add on the diplomacy side, I think creating multilateral conversation around some of these issues where countries collaborate to, if there are companies breaking laws and trying to infiltrate other companies, that if there's collaboration across borders, I think you can stop those types of activities much faster, more efficiently, because you can safeguard it by saying you can't do this, or that, you know, use export control to try to manage it. It's much more better if we can collaborate and create these conversations right now, which is why JESA wants to create policy alongside of the activities on the application side to make sure that we safeguard against some of those risks. And you had a question.
Just to add, one of the interesting side, as Anusha says, we see now that we're bringing these conversations from the diplomacy, from the foreign policy side, to the ministries of science and technology, who don't necessarily speak to each other because we start with the diplomacy. And then the conversation goes to the, I'd say, the technology ministries, and then even jump to the development, the SDG, I'd say, ministries. And because of such a topic, they're starting to have conversations that they didn't think they would. And we see that in our country, in Switzerland, and it's a challenge for them. But we actually now start seeing it, and even South Africa, we're seeing this happening. So in the end, the collateral benefit for other topics will emerge from this kind of exercise.
Hello. Yes. My name is Toshiyasu Ichioka from Japanese Research Institute, RIKEN. I'm based in Europe, facilitating international cooperation with partners in Europe and around. I've been following this JESTA movement and very much resonate with concept and ambitions. Talking about this Open Quantum Institute, the idea is that the pooling the resources, hardwares available, and granting the access from elsewhere. And our colleague from South Africa correctly said that building hardware needs enormous amount of resources, money, and usually, there isn't a national interest, private, business interests in that. So, the available resources are built by those money with certain kind of color or interests. I'm just curious to what extent the discussion has been going, how to allow access to these hardwares, from elsewhere. And there might be some interference from the government companies that spent resources to build. And of course, this is probably the area of diplomacy, how to solve this. But I just wanted to see how discussions have been going.
I'll pass on, because that's exactly one of the topics that we are bringing to the table of diplomacy and challenging them to go. But Japan and RIKEN in particular, we work with you and with your government, and both on the foreign affairs, but also on the science and technology. So Japan is very much engaged in that. But I think that's, I'll let you.
So this is actually part of the study that we started already, and we're continuing through this incubation phase for the OQI, and it's part of the business case that we're building. There should be a reason why a company would allow access to their cloud computing quantum resources. And I think they do want this because it benefits the companies, and we've seen great interest for collaboration with OQI, because they get access. They're building a hardware which is at early stages. The more people use it in different ways, the more the company can learn how to enhance it. So there's mutual benefit. So if you create something that's only one side is benefiting, it will never last. So we're trying to create mutual benefit on both people who are providing resources and on the people who are providing the research, while trying to, again, just focus the energy on using it towards solving problems that will benefit humanity. The business cases and things that are mostly business-oriented will not be a suitable probably an area for OQI, because the companies and will hire people, or the venture capitalists will fund companies to solve those. So the thing we're going to focus on is to bring resources, create an open environment for people to continuously do research and do use cases toward SDGs, create activities that will attract the government side, the commercial side, and the research side to collaborate together.
Sorry, just to follow up, we started to hear, more and more expressions like-minded countries, and this kind of, ring fencing access might be the risk for such an initiative. So that's the background of my question. So.
Yeah, so I would say we have to become aware that the risks in the crypto space, we have ways to guard against them. We just have to come together and jointly implement it. We know how to make our crypto quantum safe, and then the problem is solved. Then the risk is gone here. The real risk is that because of that threat, instead of countering it, we impose borders and boundaries. And that's where diplomacy can help.
So that's typically the kind of conversation we're able to bring in the diplomacy discussions. Please deal with this thing, so then we can do this thing.
Hello, I'm Tahar Webeh. I'm a researcher at the University of Constantine in Algeria. And I'm leading and trying to construct a research group on quantum technology named the Constantine Quantum Technologies. And we are the only group fully working on quantum technologies in the whole country. So we are facing a lot of challenges. I'm going to talk about the two main of them. So the first challenge is the following. We have a very strong theoretical physics master program, but the very best and almost all the students are thinking about leaving just after their graduation. And we are really struggling to convince them to stay, because they don't see the opportunity working on theoretical physics in general, and especially on quantum computing. Sometimes I'm even struggling to convince myself to stay because of the very difficult environment and very few resources we are working with in my country. So my first question is how GESDA and their partners can help us on this. And the second big challenge is quantum awareness. So we are facing a lot of challenges to try to convince our policymakers that this is a big deal and they should think about that. So generally when I speak with the rector or some officials, they are just, who is this crazy guy talking about this science fiction things, which is quantum computing, which can't be efficient before 10 or 20 years. So we are working on increasing quantum awareness through students, through a lot of educational efforts and education programs, but how can you help us to reach policymakers and convince them that they should pay attention to this? Thank you very much.
So quickly on your second question, we'll make sure we invite the Algerian ambassador to the next discussion. That'll be a start. But for the rest, you want to, how is that?
No, just in this very concrete case, I have seen just the day before yesterday that Algeria will come to Davos this year for the first time, your government. And I can assure you in Davos we are talking about quantum computing. So at least on this level, they will be exposed to quantum computing, and perhaps it will help them to understand that this is a major issue and not a fantasy issue. So hopefully this will help. But otherwise, I think if you keep contact with Chester, and we invite the ambassador, we're always starting like this, and then the ambassador gets informed, then he writes a small report down to your government, and then if the ambassador, if you can mention to the ambassador in the next dinner the name of the institute, so there we can be helpful. So keep contact with us.
minister show up. So that actually triggered, and we had actually the minister participating in our summit last October.
Okay, and to add to the answer, is it, if you get access through the OQI to quantum computers, then that can help you keep students in the country. The second, if you have a new technology that's fancy, but people don't see an impact, kind of, you can pivot the discussion, as I told you before, to the applications. What are the problems we can solve that I talked about? So when you start from actually the problem you want to solve, then that can help you have the impact and the awareness.
The last thing I will add is the competition would be a great way to attract students within the country and get them to form teams that hopefully may become a company later on. And we've seen this happen now with many of our competitions. Small teams in remote areas, students and a professor starting an idea, winning a competition or making it to the finals. And then because we create we shine a spotlight on them, then they get known inside the country, and then they get investment capital to start their company and find a reason to stay in their country, because at the end of the day, staying where you are and being able to do what you love is ultimately what they want to do.
Hey, yeah. Hi, I'm Mattia Vaccari, and I'm a physicist and astronomer by background, but these days I work as e-research director at the University of Cape Town, up the mountain. So we're trying to, support researchers through digital services. But so I have a question also. When JESD, of course, is carrying out a number of initiatives, including, something about, climate change, if you like, more about eco-regeneration and the like, and another initiative about science and diplomacy. So I wonder how the different task forces, that's not the word, but work together, and particularly whether there has been any thinking in terms of how do we learn from, one of the major recent revolutions, which has been, I think we can agree, artificial intelligence and machine learning, in terms of democratizing the skills and in training the next generation of scientists. We know the companies are very keen, for instance, to get people to work on their platforms, whether it's Google Cloud or Amazon Web Services, because then they get people to be trained with their platforms. I wonder if we can learn something about it, and particularly in terms of trying to create a new generation of scientists that can tackle the SDGs, which, particularly in the case of climate change, is going to affect us much earlier than 25 years from now. So,
that's a big question. I think coming back to your point in Algeria, I think one of the issues, and that links, is how do you communicate to your policymakers that they should pay attention to you? And the challenge is very often not having that capability of translating the impact into something that's meaningful to them. And one of the things JESD is very aware of is that unless we train the current and the next generation of scientists or diplomats, but also business leaders or MBAs, to think multidisciplinarily, I would say, not just to understand the radar, and we're focusing on the radar, not necessarily on today's artificial intelligence or today's issues. We're looking at the next generation of artificial intelligence. Unless we're able to give them that as this is what's happening in the future, but make sure you know how to do something with it. Make sure this is an actionable information that then helps you in your life, in your career, or in your current situation, act upon. So this is what we believe is an essential part of JESDA, but also a way for us to make sure these other dots on the radar will be taken care of, because there's just so much that this little Swiss foundation will be able to do. So I hope in some way that answers your question. We've got a few minutes left, maybe one more question. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sandro Scandalo. I'm the head of research at the ICTP, the International Center for Theoretical Physics in Trieste. I'm glad to see people that have been to ICTP, Mattias, Francesco, and others. I'm actually delighted to see this, the birth of this initiative, because this is actually something we as ICTP have been doing for half a century, trying to fill scientific divides, scientific gaps, by working on capacity building, human capacity building, doing training courses all over the world, especially in Africa, especially in the least developed countries. We've been recently establishing a center in Rwanda precisely with this goal, starting the first master's program in physics in the country and in that part of Africa. By the way, we recently helped establish a team, a scientific team doing quantum dynamics in chemistry, which is actually recognized by EPFL with a $500,000 grant through the Excellence in Africa program. So we're really looking for excellence there. So the question, I guess, or the comments is, when we talk about, for example, giving access to quantum hardware, we heard that in Algeria there's only one team that is able to actually take advantage of this opportunity. There are probably a handful of teams in South Africa and perhaps a couple of teams in Morocco, as far as I know. This is my knowledge of the African continent. But what are we going to do for the remaining 54, 55 countries in the African continent, 95% of the population? Our approach as ICTP has really been to work at the level of human capacity, trying to work at the, quantum technologies is probably one of the greatest examples, probably the first example where basic science meets applied science, and where the applications of something which is really fundamental are there, are concrete. So I would like to really, support your program and perhaps offer support from ICTP. We would be delighted to collaborate, especially when it comes to, working, training scientists, training the younger generations in this field. Thank you.
I think I was going to turn around the question to you, but I think you've answered it.
One of the things that we've been doing since probably 2006, 2007, is that we started a conference series that we call Quantum Africa, yeah? And which happens every second year, and some people have been there. Yeah? And it's always coupled conference and a kind of a school, a training event. Yeah? And the basic idea originally was to do an inventory of who is working in quantum whatever in Africa, yeah? And there are many more people than what you might think. It's just that they're not connected and networked with the rest of the world, yeah? But we've been trying very hard to network them, so much so that we also started a discussion on whether we should set up a quantum computing, quantum technology, quantum something African society, yeah? With support maybe from the African Union and other local governments. Yeah? And I convinced the colleague from Algeria that is a good idea. Yeah? And there are many other colleagues scattered across the continent that support that. Yeah? So it's a process that will take some time, yeah? and a lot of effort. Yeah? But there are lots of people of goodwill, yeah? like this gentleman, yeah? that are contributing to spread the quantum message across Africa. Yeah? In my personal experience, I train students from Southern Africa, yeah? And some of them are back in the original countries, in Zimbabwe, in Zambia, in Botswana, in Lesotho. Yeah? And they start their own little quantum groups. Yeah? So it's slowly, it's a diffusion process. It goes with the square root of t. Yeah? It doesn't go with t. Yeah? So it takes time, but I'm pretty confident that we will get there. So thank you very much.
I just wanted to add about and talk about the youth program as well, because I think one of the areas that JESA is also focusing in human capacity building is get very young people engaged and interested on the science and diplomacy side both, and I think that's one way of really creating feeders into your universities and research institutions and getting them interested, but through the competition, through the youth program, and through the work we're doing with partners, which we hope that you will join as a partner. We're hoping to start spreading the word.
So, and I want to thank you for mentioning the ICTP, because what I've told the Chester people multiple times is the one institution we should work with is yours, because you have the same mission more broadly, and so we should work on that together. Thank you for the offering help here.
I think as we're Swiss, at least I'm Swiss, and it is past 4 minutes past our end, and you have a gala to go to in 25 minutes. So thank you. We are in touch, and we will be in touch, and as well. And here's more information on the Open Quantum Institute. You can access it directly like that. We don't have much time to act, but we are just at the beginning, and we do plan to, I mean, you heard Peter, Peter doesn't lead this organization lightly, so we will do things, and so please do get in touch, and we will move ahead together, and thanks so much for being all of you here, because it's all together that we'll get there. Thank you.